absolutely. He envisioned a land where all men were created equal. Well, really all persons, I would say these days. So absolutely relevant.
Yes, relevant in the sense that it identifies with people of all nationalities, gender, equality for all, worldwide, not just specific communities in specific parts of the world.
It's relevant any day, anytime, in all communities.
He has a major street in every neighborhood, so you can't forget about it. And as long as there's some sort of memorial promoting his name, that'll bring his entire memory to your conscience in every city, whatever city you go to.
I love that question because when I was a high school student, I think in about the 7th or 8th grade, I came across a book written by King, his wife, and it was about his life. And that book was a real life changer for me. I grew up in an all-white town where there was a lot of racism, and when I read that book, it was as if I had found a new way to frame some of my own experiences as a visible minority in this town, and it gave me a lot of strength and inspiration. And so I cut out lines, or wrote out lines from that book and posted them everywhere on my walls. So it was a life-changing experience to read his work and discover that it was possible to make a change in the world.
So Martin Luther King Jr. has actually had a direct impact on my life. My parents immigrated from the Philippines in 1966, and before then, America really had strong restrictive laws against immigration from countries other than European nations. And because of Martin Luther King and other civil rights leaders, in 1965, America passed the Immigration Act in 1965, which opened the doors to a lot of people to come to the States. My parents were in the first wave. My dad was a surgeon, my mom was a nurse, and they came to America to really pursue their dreams. My dad arrived here with 20 bucks in his pocket, but went on to have a successful career as a doctor, and much to his happiness, saved a lot of lives as a surgeon. And he wouldn't have been able to come to the United States without Martin Luther King. He wouldn't have been able to raise a family here, and because of that, I am here.
Yeah, when I think about it, at least for me, I think one of the interesting things for me is because, like I think a lot of students, I've grown up hearing about Martin Luther King from the time when I was in elementary school, at least every February during Black History Month. And in some ways, to me, I believe that got kind of cliche for me sometimes. So for me, I've always tried to make sure that I've been able to appreciate the things that Martin Luther King did. So for me, I've also kind of reinvented him a lot for myself and make sure I can value the kind of totality of his life and his vision, his purpose. And one of the things that I've honestly found the most fascinating for me, and maybe about the last 4 or 5 years, when I study and look over Martin Luther King's life and his work and his writing and things like that over and over again, is how much of the civil rights movement was a personal movement for him also. And just like the movement changed and progressed and went forward, he also tried to be sensitive to movement and change. And so he was always sensitive to trying to reevaluate his approaches to change. And I think that's something we don't appreciate about Martin Luther King, because I think we tend to often think of Martin Luther King as being a very static figure. We have a very kind of fixed way of understanding, but he was always constantly thinking about reevaluating and understanding his approaches, thinking about what were the shortcomings of his own approaches, and trying to reevaluate and adjust those accordingly.
One of the things that Martin Luther King Jr. Made possible to better my life was because the time when I made the decision to come to the United States. I wasn't afraid to come because I was thinking the only difference between me and people from the United States was the language. I never thought about color or Mexican or American. I thought that either American or Mexican we were equals, so we have the same rights.
He's an example to me of activism, of speaking out, of naming things for what they are, in fact, because it can be hard to name, but if they're labeled for you, then you have something to fight against.
To me, he remains a symbol of America, of the better angels of our nature. There's No one in our nation's history, in my mind, no one in our nation's history has ever expressed with greater moral power, with greater clarity, or with greater eloquence the promise and the meaning of the America that I believe in. When I think today of how much still there is of hatred and ignorance and violence, Dr. King's words, his message are still true. You know, that we need to heed his call.